This conference will now be recorded.
Let's just okay. So give me one quick minute. People are just settling in down here. Okay, so let's start our session again with creating a resource group and a storage account inside that resource group right now. So let's do one thing. I'm just creating a simple resource group out here known as test resource group in a location like East2. I want to also go ahead and create my storage account in East2 as well. In a general scenario is that wherever your resources are there, you'll normally create your resource group also in the same region. It's not a hard and fast rule, but a best practice to create the same thing out there. So let me now go ahead and say, okay, fine. I'll say create. I'll say storage account and say enter. And let me get a storage account created firstly. So again, the convention is like all small letters and no special characters involved out here. And also the name should be unique and etc. So let me again take the same project name out here. Let's see if it's already taken. So I'll say 4, and here I'll again change my location to ECS2. I'm taking the performance tier as standard. Now even in the real time environment, guys, we normally go for a standard tier. You may have a question here that what premium offers you something like an SSD, then why don't you go for it? Now the performance difference is very low. You won't even be able to recognize that there is actually a difference or there is actually a latency when you're going for standard. But the main reason not going for a premium, if I hit premium out here, right, it says what is the type of the account that you actually want to go ahead and create. There are three things out here: block blobs, file shares, and page blobs. We'll look at what are the types of blobs out here. But the main reason out here, do you see, you don't see an option for GRS, RAGRS, and etc. Premium storage accounts don't support all those things out. Premium storage accounts don't support redundancy. It only supports LRS. So it will only give you 3 copies in the same data center. It doesn't give you a GRS or an RAGRS and etc. Reason being, premium is the latest option, and to replicate the data, which is an SSD, it's a bit difficult to find a data center across which supports SSD. So that's the reason you don't find premium out there, and a lot of customers also don't go for premium service easily. They don't want to really go for a premium service out there. That's the reason in most of the scenarios, to take the best advantage of the redundancy and the best advantage of, let's say, the available options out there, we go for a standard performance tier. Even in the real time scenario, we go for a standard performance tier out here. So I'll say standard, I'll say advanced. In here, I'm just selecting something known as the access tier as hot. Okay, now this is important. So the access tier of the storage account is hot. Okay, so I'll say networking, public endpoints, all networks, not selecting anything out here. Data protection, I'm just taking the available options out here like enable, soft, delete, and etc. And I'll say review and create. So someone asked the question, I think you asked the question the other day, that what if you don't want this option? If you want the blobs to be deleted immediately and not restore them out, so you'll have to just disable this out. So you don't have an option to restore it back again. So for now, I'll just enable this out and I'll say 7 days out here, and I'll say review and create. So I'm not tagging my resource. I'm not enabling any tags out here, and I'm just saying review and create this out. Now there is a request that is going to Microsoft Azure in the backend, and Microsoft Azure will go ahead and create a storage account for me. And one thing that I want to emphasize again, guys, is that this is a hot storage account, meaning whatever blobs that you upload will be by default in something known as a hot. But let's say in a scenario that again you're a banking organization, you want or you have two types of data, one which frequently is being accessed, the other which is not frequently being accessed. So you have a couple of blobs which are frequently being visited and etc. A couple of files or a couple of blobs basically which are not frequently being visited. Then how do you make sure to optimize your cost? Because if everything is hot, right, then the rate of storage is high. If everything is cool, the rate of transaction is high. Then how do you make sure to have a combination of cool and hot in the same storage account is what we are going to see right now. We'll see how to store files or how to store blobs in a cool and hot and etc. So let's see that. So my storage account is created. Here I'll just go into a container and create something known as a test container out here. So I'll say this is a test container, private, and I'll say create. So container is created. Now I'll just go ahead and I'll say upload the files, and I'll just select a bunch of files out here. So I'm just selecting a bunch of files out here, and you can also go ahead and upload these files inside a folder out here. You can just say it is an images folder and etc. You can do that. Here do you see you have hot and in bracket inferred, meaning it's already hot. So that's the reason I'm going ahead and creating all these files in hot or all these blobs in hot. While uploading, you can also say that, you know what, it's not hot, it's cool. Or you have another tier known as archive. Let's understand this. For example, for by default right now, I'm just selecting something known as hot. And I'm now basically saying, okay, fine, upload. So I've taken a bunch of files, picked them up, and I said upload all these files out here. And everything by default is getting into something known as hot. Now what I'm going to do right now is, now can I change a file that is uploaded into something like a cool tier? For example, let's say there are a couple of files that which are sample 5 and sample 6, which I don't want it in hot because they're not frequently being accessed. This is something that I want to basically just store it in cool. So I can just select the file. So I'll have to do it individually again. I'm selecting the file and I'm saying change tier of one particular blob. And I can say, okay, fine, cool, and save. Meaning now I am telling storage account, or I'm telling this particular service explicitly that, you know what, this is stored in something known as a cool tier. So the storage cost should be less. But whenever you read this file, the transaction cost will be high. And now let's say you have another file which is like sample 7, which let's say is not at all being accessed. Even in cool, you have some amount of cost for storing the data. Let's say you have a file or which or a blob known as sample 7 out here, which is not at all being touched at all. Like you just want to take it and just want to put it somewhere. That's it. There is no one who's again coming here and visiting this blob and etc. So there is another option for you inside the blob. If I say change tier again, you have hot, cool, and what? Archive. There is something known as an archive tier. And if I click on this, there is a warning that is coming out telling that setting the access tier to archive will make your blob inaccessible until rehydrated back to hot or cool. Meaning what it tells you is that if you change this to something known as an archive, if I change my blob to something known as an archive out here, what's going to happen is that your blob isn't going to be available over the internet. It's not going to be available for the download. It's not generally going to be available. It's not available. It is inaccessible. Your blob is inaccessible. If you want to again make it accessible, you'll have to come here, change the tier to either hot or cool. Now, when you go from an archive to a hot or a cool tier, it might take several hours, depending upon the size of the blob, depending upon how many blobs are there and etc. It might take, I've also seen it taking somewhere around 7 to 8 hours also. to make those files available. The reason being, these files are in the backend. Like they are into a server known as an archive server. Microsoft just takes everything out and puts it into that particular server. Now, to get these files back again into your storage account, there is a lot that happens in the backend. So if I now say save, this blob is inaccessible. After some time, this blob will become inaccessible. If you want to now make it available over the internet right now, you'll have to make sure to change it to a hot again or a cool again, either a hot or a cool to make it available, and then you can access over the internet again. Okay. So three things out here: a hot, a cool, an archive. Okay. Fair enough until here. Everyone is getting until here. Now the issue with this one, any
Hello.
questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, Kiran. Kiran,
Yeah, fine.
what is the percentage that we use these kind of, archiving a blob? How much is the percentage of it? Because it takes
What
several hours to again change the tier to hot or cool.
right? So what happens
So,
normally is
what
that
is the yeah.
what happens normally is that if I understand your question right, you're asking me what is the percentage, meaning what are the number of blobs that we put in hot versus cool or archive, isn't it? Or is that
Yes.
the question that I got? Okay. So
No,
it
no,
again
no.
depends upon, yeah. So it again
No,
depends
actually.
upon,
Yeah, you
yeah.
go ahead. I'll get.
So I said it again depends upon the line of business that you're into again. Let's say if you're a newspaper organization, you have like about 10 years old newspapers that you just want to store somewhere in the cloud. You can just put all those files into something like an archive access tier out here. Let's say if you are, let's say, into a business where the files are being accessed very frequently, then you put it into something known as hot tier. So it depends upon what is your business and what are you exactly trying to achieve out here. So there isn't any defined ratio as such, like what are the number of files in hot or what are the number of files in cool. Again, it just depends upon what you're trying to achieve. You can have a storage account entirely into archive. You can have something entirely into cool or entirely into hot and etc. Okay, does that answer your question, Farin?
Yes, yes, Kiran. Thanks. I got the
Okay.
answer.
Okay. Yes, you get charged for that. So from archive to, again, if you want to change it to cool or a hot, right? There is something known as a rehydration charge. So what you're doing is that you're getting it back to life. When Microsoft tells it's rehydration, you're getting it back to life. There is a charge for that. That's the reason I said in the first class is that when you go for an ICICI bank and tell you that ask that can you give me the transactions of the last 10 years, they'll take a charge from you, right? Somewhere around 100 rupees or something like that. That is the charge what they pay for the cloud provider directly. Okay, that's the charge what we can assume that they pay for the cloud provider directly if ICICI is using Azure. Okay, so there is a charge for it. You can store it, yeah. You can. No, it is a very minimal cost, like the bare minimal cost, like a very 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 you don't even see that reflecting in your bill. So it's that bare minimal. So you go for a cool option when, let's say for example, 1 year old data transactions, they might not be accessed, but just in case if they are accessed, I want it to be readily available, even though when it is like readily accessible. But when you put it in a cool tier, the storage cost is less when compared to the hot. Okay. So very rarely accessed. I'll say cool, which is not at all being accessed. There is like 0.001 percentage of probability that you will access the file, but you just want to store it for your records. You'll go for archive. Frequency of access, you'll switch the tiers out here. Now this is a good option. Like this is not a good but a great option out here, because you can now basically control what is your cost, right? Because the purpose of the entire thing is to reduce the cost. I'm just looking at 9 blobs out here. But when you look at a company like ICICI, imagine how many blobs they'd have, right? They'll have like some millions of files out here which they want to manage, because there are so many customers and they're using a backend storage account to provide all these things out, isn't it? Then the question now is that if I, let's say, I am an administrator of a storage account working for a company known as ICICI, then how would I manage all these blobs then? Let's say my company is telling me that, you know what, make sure that whenever a blob goes, or the age of a blob goes from 30 days, like if it's 30 days old, then move it to archive. In this storage account, if you have a blob inside it, if the blob is not accessed frequently, and if the blob is not accessed for 30 consecutive days, then move it to, let's say, something like what, a hot archive account, or, or let's say archive access tier. So what I have to do out here is that I, as an employee, now I'll come into the file, or I'll come into the blob here, and I'll say properties, and I'll say, okay, fine, the creation time is this, the last modified time is this, meaning whenever it is like, whenever you have a new blob with the same name sample1.jpg added to it, or whenever these being read, you will have a timestamp known as last modified. Okay, so if I add another file called sample1.jpg, I'll overwrite this. If I overwrite this, then the last modified time will get updated. If I read this also, the last modified time will get updated. Now, as an employee, I'll have to come here, and as an administrator, I'll have to come here. I'll have to check whether the last modified time, okay, fine. Now I'll come the 27th of December, and if the file is not being accessed at all, the last modified time will still be what? 27th November, today's date. I'll have to see this for about millions of blobs, and then decide whether it should be hot or it should be cool, and etc. Do you understand now how, or do you all understand now how difficult this process is? It is difficult, right? It is like very, very difficult to achieve this out. And there is a scope for a lot of human error out here, because it is practically impossible for me to go ahead and check each and every blob and see what is the time modified and see what is the age of it and etc. I cannot do this. This is like practically impossible. At the same time, it will take like a lot of human hours to get this done, and I just cannot basically take in employees to just do this purpose for me, right? I cannot do that. So thing is that I need something, or I need someone to automatically see what is the age of my blob and then change it to cool, hot, and etc. based upon the rule I provide, based upon what I tell. That is where a concept known as life cycle management comes into picture. So life cycle management allows you to define different rules which controls the life cycle of your blobs. Now, what is the life cycle here? Is that whether you want it in cool, hot, archive, whatever it is. How do I define it? Let's see that. So I can come down to the storage account level. So I'm at the storage account right now. And from the blades of the storage account, I will choose, or I can just type something known as life cycle management. And if I now click this, now it just tells you that, you know what, lifecycle management offers you a rich a rich set of rules and etc. for your blob storage account and etc. What exactly this does is this. Let's say I want to add a rule. Now let me duplicate this particular tab and let me go inside the container right now. And I have a couple of blobs out here. What I'll do right now is that I'll say add a rule, and now it's telling, okay, fine, please give me a name of a rule. Okay, I'll say this is rule 30 days. I'm now saying please apply this rule for all the blobs in my storage account, like whatever the blob is, I don't mind. Please add it for all the blobs in my storage account, and the blob type is a base blob, blob, and the blob type is a base blob, and etc. The same thing. I'm just selecting this out. Now I can tell if the last modified date is greater than something like, let's say, 365 days. Like if the blob is not touched for 365 days, meaning 1 year, then you have different options. It says then delete the blob or move the blob to cool, move the blob to hot, or move. I mean, there is no hot because by default it knows that you are a hot storage account right now. It's now telling you move it to cool, move it to archive, or delete the blob. I'll say okay, fine. I want to move it to the archive storage account, and I'll say add. Now, isn't this a bit easier right now for handling all your blobs right now? Now you can say that, you know what, whatever blob you find in my storage account, please go into it. Please make sure if the day, like it's modified more than, if let's say the modified date is more than 365 days, then move it to something like archive. Okay. And I just added this rule, and it will take about 48 hours for the rule to start. Meaning the rule will come into picture after 48 hours. Okay. You can also go ahead inside this rule and also modify this rule. Like let's say I gave it as 30 days, but it's actually 365 days. I can then update this out and modify this out. Now let's say you don't want the rule to apply for all the containers, but only a few containers and a few blobs inside that particular container. For example, in my case, I don't want this rule to apply to, let's say, something like $logs, because these are all my log files. I don't want them to get deleted and etc. I only want the test container to come into picture right now. What I can do out here is that I can say add another rule, or change the existing rule out here. I'll say container rule. Now I won't say apply rule to all the blobs in my storage account. I'll select the other option telling limit blob with filters. I can now filter what I want right now. And I can say, okay, fine, next. I can say the same thing like 30 days, then please go ahead and delete this blob or move it to cool, move it to hot and everything. Now I can say, it's now asking me what is the filter set that you want to actually give. I can say, please apply it to test containers and all the blobs inside the test container, starting with the letter S. Okay. Because I have sample 1, sample 2 and etc. Right. All the blobs starting with the letter S. How do I give it? So test container is the name of my container. But now it's now giving you an example telling that enter a prefix in such a way that my container / prefix. I'll say test container / S. That's it. It will now consider all the blobs starting with the name S. This rule will now start to apply to all the blobs starting with the name S. Let's say you have other set of blobs that are not starting with S but starting with Z. You want the same rule to be applied to them. You can do the same thing here. You can say test container Z. How many prefixes can you add in that way? 10 prefixes. In each rule, you can add about 10 prefixes out here. Each rule supports about 10 prefixes. What are the maximum number of rules per a storage account that you can add? 100. 100 rules, 10 prefixes in each rule is what you can go ahead and add here out. And these rules, whenever you add, will take about 48 hours to come into action. Okay, now you can think about a combination. Let's say if you have different containers, in each and every container wants a different life cycle. Let's say test container wants a 30-day period. Test container 1 wants a 60-day period. You can add multiple rules out here to manage your entire life cycle. At any point in time, let's say you don't want to, or you don't want this rule to basically get executed, you can come here, select the rule and also disable this out. Okay. So you also have an option to enable or disable an existing rule. And this comes into picture, or this comes into, very much use when you have different blobs that requires different life cycle, like let's say a hot or a cool and etc., combination of everything. So it's not humanly possible to go ahead into each and every blob and change this out. There's a lot of room for error, it takes a lot of time, and it's not practically possible. So that's the reason lifecycle management comes into picture. Now This is one of the most asked interview questions after replication tiers. They'll tell you, okay, fine. The interview questions are something like, I have a scenario right now. I have a development team. I have a QA team. The developers want the blobs inside the container to be in hot and move to cool after 30 days. QA wants it to be, let's say, somewhere like 365 days. After 365 days, they want it to move it to something like archive. So, how do you handle this kind of a scenario? The answer here is by using something known as lifecycle management policies. Okay. Any questions here, guys, with this? Yes. Mhm. Right. It'll take another 48 hours. So whenever you hit a modify button out there, it will take 48 hours for the modified route to come into picture. 48 hours. Yeah. Whatever, whenever you're modifying it, for example, I added it right now. The application would be on 29th, the same time, 7:30. That's when the application it'll act. Yes. Mhm. Mhm. Accounts. So good question is that, let's say you're doing for one storage account, which is great, but I have 100 storage accounts. And how do you basically manage all these things out? That's where automation comes into picture. That's where PowerShell scripting and all those things comes into picture. You can apply the same thing using a PowerShell scripts and etc. We'll look at that when we look into what PowerShell really is, etc. Yes. Like for the cloud in general, or you're talking about this service? So in general, like normally, if you see, 80% of the Fortune 500 companies are using Azure. It is a bit costlier than what AWS or GCP has to offer. It is a bit costlier, I agree with that, but it's user friendly. So the affordability, if you look at that, right? Mostly, yes, Fortune 500 companies go for it. Yes, they can afford for it. Like again, it depends upon what you're trying to use and how you're trying to use. Greater your business, greater will be your consumption level also, right? So greater your business, greater will be your consumption levels also. Yeah, the kind of options. Let's say if I'm a business who's only in India, I don't want to go for GRS and everything. I'm satisfied with LRS. In that way, I can minimize my cost, I can optimize my cost. Okay. Hmm. Right. Right. Yes, that's also is applicable. Like correct. You can apply it to this particular thing out here. Right. Hmm. Right. Okay. So if it's like minimal amount of data, like I have seven blobs and etc., I'm not charged heavily. But if it's like millions of data, right, there's millions of blobs out there, right, then the charges of course high, depending upon what exactly that you want to store, etc. Now there's one more thing here that I want to actually cover out here is that, let's say I'll go into a container. Now I don't have one container, but I have millions of containers again. Okay. I have now applied a lifecycle policy out here telling that please go ahead and delete a blob whenever you see a blob that is like 30 days old. I mean more than 30 days old, go ahead and delete it out. But there is one thing is that out of those million containers, I have this container known as a test container under which I am storing customer sensitive data which isn't supposed to be deleted at all. Now there is a conflict. You have to apply a rule where you need to basically go ahead and delete all the blobs apart from this one. So I went ahead and applied a general rule telling that okay, fine, please go ahead and delete any blob that is older than 30 days. Now I have a container which is called test container out here, just now telling me that okay, fine, do not delete these blobs out here. Now there is a conflict out here, right? So meaning I don't want this blobs to be deleted at all. That's where you have something known as an access policy, and this is known as retention. These are called as retentions, or these are also known as immutable blob, meaning you can apply a policy out here telling that okay fine, you know what, this policy is a time based retention policy. Please set 365 days. Until 365 days, no one should go ahead and delete these blobs. Even the lifecycle policy that I applied shouldn't be in a position to go ahead and delete these out. And if I say okay, you will have something known as a time based retention policy, and this is very important, guys. The state of it is unlocked. Okay, I can go ahead and apply a lock on top of it. Meaning, how can I do that? Lock policy. But I'm not going to do this right now, because if you apply lock, now this is very important. If you apply lock, you will not be able to delete it again. You won't be able to unlock it. This is something Azure will not allow you to do. Even if you raise a Microsoft support ticket, they'll ask you like a millions of questions, and you won't be able to do that also. Okay, so don't apply it until and unless you are sure about applications of this particular lock and etc. We do this for production level data. We do this for production level data, and for let's say data like development or quality analysis and all, we don't apply these locks at all. So this is in place, or this is known as a retention policy, or also famously known as immutable blob policies. This will only come into picture, or this will come into picture when you don't want this data inside a particular container to get deleted, let's say after a period of time, because you have applied a policy and that policy now conflicts with your interest right now for this particular container. You can now come here into this specific container and apply something known as an access policy out here. Okay, so do different things out here. One is a lifecycle management policies. Second is something known as a retention or an immutable blob policy. So lifecycle management policy tells you whether you want to delete it, move it to hot and etc. after a period of time. Retention policy tells you how longer you want to retain these blobs out. So two things out here, right? Retention and deletion. Deletion is controlled by, or deletion modification is actually controlled by lifecycle management. Retention is controlled by something known as immutable blob policies that are there inside a container. Okay, if I apply this retention, all the blobs inside this particular container will inherit this particular retention period out here. Okay, any questions with this particular topic out here? So just delete this out and I'll say okay. Now I'm only able to delete this retention because it's in an unlocked state. You won't be able to delete it if it's in a logged state out here. Let's come back again. Now let's go into my storage account service. Now one quick thing out here is that traditionally a storage account service was used to store unstructured data. Like you only had something known as a blob storage out here. You did not have a support for something like tables or queues and all these things out. Well, look at what tables and queues are, but these are not like really important out here right now. But one more thing that came into picture, along with let's say something like the storage account service to hold data, is that it also gave you an option to host your website. Meaning, let's say something you have something like a blog. Okay, you're a blogger, you're just writing some very static website, meaning something like blogs and all that stuff. You now want to go ahead and host your website. You already are using something like a storage account service out here. Now you also want to make use of the storage account service to host your data. How do you do that? Is that there is an option known as a static website out here. Under data management, you have something known as a static website, meaning Microsoft Azure is now giving you an option to host websites that are static in nature. Like that's the reason I said blogs, content that is not changing over a period of time and etc. So if you're any which ways you're using a storage account service, you're creating containers and etc. You're paying Azure, right? In the same way, why don't you go ahead and leverage this service for hosting your website as well instead of depending upon something like WordPress and etc. You can do that. How you can do that is that I'll come down to something known as a static website out here, and here by default it is disabled. I'll go ahead and enable this out, and it's asking you two different things out here. One, it's telling you what is the name of index document. I'll just give it a very simple name known as index.html, static content, and it's asking what is the error document path. I'll just give it something known as error.html. So this is my assumption that code my code is a HTML code, and the main page of my code is known as an index.html, and error handling page is known as a error.html. This is my assumption that I'm going with. Okay, and I'll say something known as save. Now, as and when I did a save, Microsoft is now telling me that you know what, an Azure storage container known as $web has been created for you. Now you've seen something known as a $log folder or a $log container. In the same way, if I now go into my containers right now, I have something known as a $web, okay, to host my websites. Now what I'll do right now is again I'll come back to something known as a static website, and in here I have something known as a primary endpoint, a URL that can be accessed. I can take this URL, paste it out here, and I can browse this out. Now it says that the requested content does not exist. Reason being, whenever I hit this website, right, it's going into this particular container known as $web, and it is searching for a file known as index.html, which I have provided it out, which I told that you know what, there is a file known as index.html, please take it out. But it's not getting any file, and that's the reason you're getting something known as the requested content does not exist, it's not found. HTTPS status code is 404, meaning it's an error, meaning I'm not able to find anything. What I'll do right now is that just for this demo, I'll go ahead and download a very simple HTML template. So download free HTML templates, and I'll use a website known as freecss.com out here. This is where you get a lot of HTML templates and etc. So I'm just taking this website and I'm just downloading a very simple template. So this is like looks like a cycle website where they basically sell out cycles and all that stuff. I'll say download, and I'm getting a zip file out here, and I'll go into that particular folder where it got downloaded. I'll just say extract this particular folder. So I'll say extract, and I'll just go ahead and extract all the contents of this particular file into something like a folder out here, and inside this folder I have all these particular HTML content, one of which is what, index.html. This is the important file what I'm actually looking out for, right? So what I'll do right now is all these things, right, the CSS, images, JSON, etc., all this is unstructured data again. I want to make sure to transfer this data, I want to make sure to take this data and put it inside my storage container. How can I do this, guys? Sorry, upload it using what, the upload option. But the issue with the upload option here is that if I come down, right, if I say upload, there is no option to upload a folder. The issue with the direct website is that there is no option to go ahead and upload a folder out here. So what I'm going to do is that I will use another option known as Microsoft Storage Explorer. Okay, the one that we were talking about. So what I'll do out here is that firstly I'll grab the access keys of my particular container or my particular storage account out here. So I'm just copying the connection string and I'm saying Storage Explorer. I'll open this particular service, and once this service loads, I'll go ahead and get connected to my storage account using the connection string that I've just copied out here. Okay, I'll take this connection string, I'll open the connection dialog, I'll go into my service and I'll just put the connection string out here. So let's give it a minute. And I'm just clicking on the connection dialog out here. Let's allow a minute for this to load. And I'll say storage account service. I'll say connection string next. Put this connection string in, and this is healthcare US4. Now, if you see this right in the backend, like it's also connected to my account using my, what do you say, my account details, because I've used this account details a lot of times. So I already have the storage account out here. So let me go ahead here. Let me go into the containers. Let's give this a minute. I'll go into the blob containers, and I'm looking for one specific container out here called what? $web. What I'm going to do right now is that inside $web, I'll say, okay, fine, I'm inside this container. There's nothing inside this container. And when I look at my folders, or when I look at my files that I need to upload, I have 3 folders and a couple of files to be uploaded, right? So firstly, what I'll do is I'll say, click on upload. I'll say upload the folder. I'm targeting the entire folder right now. And as and when I click on upload the folder, it's asking me where is the folder path and etc. I'll just select my computer. I'll just go into the downloads, select folder, upload this out. Again, upload folder, select folder, upload this out. So I'll have to do this 3 times out here, because folder selection is like one folder at a time out here. Then upload. Finally, select folder and JS. This is the folder that I want to upload. I'll just select and say upload. Finally, so 3 folders and a couple of files out here, right? So now I'll go into, let's say, something known as upload files. And files, I can just select multiple files at the same time. Selecting all these files out here. I'm saying upload files out here. So I am now taking, so whatever is there in my local machine, I'm just taking out and uploading it into the storage account out here. So uploaded. Let's go back to our container out here in the storage account service. And as and when I go into the container, sorry, not the test container, the $web. I have all these things here, right? So whatever was there or whatever I've extracted, I went ahead and I was able to successfully upload it into the container out here. Now I'll come back here into the website and I'll say browse. And I'm now getting a website out here. So a website that is hosted out of a service known as an Azure storage account. And there is one specific option there which is known as a static website. Meaning, this is a website, great, you don't have all these options called login and etc. No matter how much I click this, right, you won't have this, because login and all needs something known as a backend database and all these things out. So this is a website which is static in nature. Now you can imagine that, you have a blog website and etc. Or you simply have an advertising website that has an HTML content. You just want to advertise it at a very low cost. You can use the Azure storage service out here, because you're already storing files and everything in the Azure storage service. You can just go ahead and leverage this particular service to go ahead and host your websites out. Okay, so this is one additional feature what Microsoft is giving you out here. Okay, any questions with this, guys? Any questions with the entire topics that we discussed today? You can't do that because this service is not like, really great out here. Like it's not, let's say, something that you can go ahead and unzip and all. So you'll have to have that particular bare folder structure. So you cannot do a zip and unzip it out inside the storage account out there. Yes, you can change your domain into your own custom domain names out here. For that, you'll need to have a custom domain, and it supports something known as a CNAME record. So we'll talk about what are the name conventions and all these things when we come to something known as DNS. It will support custom domains as well. You can have a custom domain for this, a friendly name. You can have your own domain name, and you can map your domain to this particular domain out here. You can do that. Okay. Yes. So if you have a multiple folder structure, right, you'll have to choose something like a PowerShell script to upload all those things out. So you'll have to come through. Which one? Sorry. I'll show you how to integrate that when we come into something known as an automation. I'll show you how to do that and etc. Any more questions with this, guys?
Sir,
Yes, please.
sir, in lifecycle management, we are having rules to move the blobs from hot tier to cold tier or archives.
Hmm.
Sir, do we have any rule to? You said that if we want to exclude some, we have to log that in immutable storage.
Correct.
So, do we have any rule in lifecycle management to exclude some particular files? Like, no, to make that easy.
So you do not have a lifecycle management to exclude it, but when you're
Okay, sir.
giving a lifecycle management, you can give a rule in such a way that it's already excluded. Like
Okay,
I
sir.
don't want it to, yeah, I don't want it to apply with that particular container name. You just don't have to mention that particular container in the filter.
Okay,
So
sir.
it's like how do you want to give the lifecycle management rule? That matters whether you want to exclude it or include it and etc.
Okay,
Okay.
sir. Okay.
Any more questions here, guys? So it's all client details. It depends upon the line of business that you're into again. So you will have a set of instructions that are coming from your client or the architecture team, whichever team is responsible to give you that. Based upon that, you'll be able to tell that, okay, fine, these are the blobs that I need to put it in hot and all that stuff. So we are not the decision makers really. We are mostly the implementation, part which comes into our picture. If it was an architecture class, then I would have said that, okay, fine, we are the decision makers and etc. Any more questions here, guys? Okay, then. So if there are no further questions, then I'm good to close for the day, guys. Please revise this out, and on Monday we'll start with the automation part of things. Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great day ahead. So I'll just give me a minute.